I'm David Remnick, host of the New Yorker Radio Hour. There's nothing like finding a story you can really sink into that lets you tune out the noise and focus on what matters. In print or here on the podcast, The New Yorker brings you thoughtfulness and depth and even humor that you can't find anywhere else. So please join me every week for the New Yorker Radio Hour, wherever you listen to podcasts.
From PRX and Transom, this is Sound School. I'm Rob Rosenthal with the backstory to great audio storytelling. On the last episode, as some of you might remember, I spent a moment lamenting the pile of bad news for audio producers in 2025. In response, as a kind of antidote, I said, let's kick off the new year on a positive note with a couple of inspiring interviews I had with young producers. I started with Anna Van Dyne, who took a chance on a documentary she made about a rural physician in Vermont. Instead of narrating the story herself, Anna asked the doctor to narrate. A creative choice and highly unusual.
I think we could all experiment more.
The pain of loss far exceeds the love of gain.
On this episode of Sound School, my chat with Kabir Jagram. Kabir's 23, lives in Johannesburg, has a degree in politics, philosophy, and economics, plus an honors degree in journalism.
And yeah, I don't know what else to say about myself. I rap occasionally for vibes. Yeah.
Staring at a fire as it burning through the sky. What a time to be alive. I can feel it in my soul.
What I find inspiring about Kabir is his willingness to wade into a thorny subject, one that was difficult to report on and difficult for him to even talk about. Kabir says men in South Africa have a big problem expressing emotions. Men are stoic.
Lots of people of color in South Africa associate being stoic with surviving.
Surviving economically. Kabir says unemployment among young people his age in South Africa is incredibly high, some of the highest in the world, about 46%, according to the South African government. And if you live in a township, an area designated for black people during apartheid, the unemployment rate is much higher. It's a situation that leads men to stifle their feelings.
It just kind of leaves no room to actually be like, what is happening with me right now? And that's compounded by the fact that mental health has never been seen as a real thing. It's kind of just been a way to say, nah, you're being weak.
This is true for Kabir, too. He's guarded.
Yeah, that is my reality.
And his friend's reality as well, especially a close friend named Shaki.
So my name, government name, Mishak Davies Perry. But a lot of my friends call me Shaki. Yeah, I'm 26. What else can I say about myself?
That's my boy Shaki. Like me, he was raised in the madness of Jersey. And he talks a lot. Like, low-key, like he's afraid of silence. Shaki is a born hustler. And at the moment, he's making his money as an Uber driver. He lives just northeast of the city center in a suburb called Orange Grove. And he stays there in the house with his 3 brothers and their 2 dogs.
Oh, okay. So this is Mulan. Mulan was a stray and she was...
It was Shaki's mental health crisis, a moment when he considered dying by suicide, that led Kabir to produce this documentary about men and mental health in South Africa. And as a heads up, we'll hear the details of Shaki's struggles shortly. Kabir's documentary is called Nothing Wrong, Bro.
He says that when he was a kid, his parents were busy all of the time. So he was basically raised by the TV.
So I can say that, yeah, that with the movies and all of that, that influenced me greatly in terms of like what a family is supposed to be like.
But the reality was very different. Shaki's parents were not like those parents in the movies.
I remember the first time I said I love you to my parents, they were shocked, bro. Like, they didn't know what to do, bro. They were like, whoa. They looked at me, they looked at each other, and then they kind of laughed, you know? And then it was like an embarrassed thing where they were like, yeah, just go to your room, bro, you know? And then later my mom called me, is like, don't worry about it. Like, we love you too.
Nothing Wrong, Bro is Kabir's first ever radio documentary. He produced it for a podcast called Radio Workshop that reports on young Africa, one story at a time, as they put it. And for full disclosure, for several years I was a consultant for the podcast, and I still am from time to time. Radio Workshop's mission is to work with young reporters, show them the ropes, how to record in the field, how to interview, how to write and narrate. And I'll just mention right here, Kabir's narration sounds effortless. He's clear, he's conversational, he's feeling what he's saying, and he's very sure-handed, which means the writing is spot on, even though he says it took a long time.
Absolutely. Like, I hate how this is written, or like, God damn it, I have so many edits that I have to make. So like, I'm there like, shit, I suck at this.
Who hasn't been there? And by the way, it wasn't easy for him to even tell me that.
Even like saying what I just said now, I was like kind of squirming, like, oh my God, people are going to hear me say that.
So in addition to helping Kabir write and narrate and interview and all the things, Radio Workshop also helped him discover the power of audio storytelling.
Yeah, like men just like to talk shit on a mic and call it a podcast. And I thought that's what podcasting was. But then I did this and I'm like, oh, it's like, it can be cinematic, it can be like documentary, it's like audio film.
Getting back to the story about Shaki, back in high school, Kabir wrote raps for a hip-hop group called 12 Dogs, and he still does. Shaki wasn't a member of the group back then, but he showed up one night and hung out. That's how they met.
And while I sat in a corner writing a verse, he was outside the cottage with a bunch of the gents. He was passing a joint one way, he bit a fat chunk out of a mango, and he passed it the other way. And I was there thinking, what is this gent even doing here? Then he stepped to the mic with mango juice stains on his hand. Suddenly, these sweet, sentimental type of words started flowing from him. And somehow they just fit perfectly with the kind of music we made. And he low-key agreed.
I was like, yeah. Finally, there's some people who are doing music out there, who are on that level that I'm like, yeah, you see now I can work with someone, now we can make something beautiful,
From that night on, Shaki was in, and the guys in the group grew close. They spent a lot of time together making music, as well as sitting on the stoop smoking weed, telling stories, and looking out at the Johannesburg skyline.
Then one day, I woke up to a flood of messages on the group chat. Everyone's talking about Shaki. Something about an Instagram story. I open my IG, I cough, and I can't believe this shit. Shaki is talking shit about us, saying something like we aren't good friends to him. We tried to hit him up, but he refused to take our calls. And so we figured, it's calm, and we'll let him do his thing. He was done with us, I guess, done with his old way of living. He was completely MIA for about a year. And then he calls on a random Thursday. I'm with the boys and we're loitering outside this depressingly empty bar. And we're trying to laugh at how badly we bombed at this open mic night. Shaki first calls our friend Lucas from an unknown number. But the call doesn't last long. And when Lucas comes back, he's shook. He tells us that Shaki's sitting in the Gama Park and he wants to take his life. So we jump in the car and boy, I fly down the M1. We don't care about no speeding fines at this point because Shaki's the only thing on our minds. Simon's there in the passenger seat saying some bullshit to me, but I cannot hear him. I'm just there speeding, hoping that I get to Shaki in time. When we arrive at the park, we find him sitting in his car in the darkness. He's holding his head in his left hand and his phone in the right. His mom's on speaker quoting Bible verses to him. Something about resisting the devil's invite. But he just sits there, motionless and unresponsive to her preachings.
It was the first time she experienced me in a mess. Because she was always like, yeah, this guy is the guy who's numb, literally, right? Is the guy who doesn't give a shit. Because she was even like, bro, if you break down, then you understand, your bros are gone, bro, And she was more worried about yo, bro, you have to stand up.
Shaki's mom hung up when we told her we were there. We sat with him for almost an hour and we basically said nothing because sometimes there's just nothing you can say. Nothing about the year gone by or how we got there. And when Shaki finally spoke, he said, yo, I almost let the devil in. I saw Shaki cry for the first time that night. And I saw him, really saw him.
After that hour in the car with Shaki, everyone went back to their hangout. As always, they smoked weed and watched the city lights. What they didn't do was talk about what just happened. How did Shaki get to this dark place? Why did he disappear for a year? How can the crew help him? Kabir told me they didn't talk about any of that.
It actually blows my mind sometimes because it was kind of gaslighting. Did this thing like just not happen? Like, am I making it deeper in my head than it actually is? Because it happens like all the time. Like, I've heard gents talk about like stories where like, yo, dog, I saw this gent get shot the other day. And then the very next sentence is just like, but anyways, dog, what you want to eat? And then like just talk about something else. And it's like, dude, how the fuck did you just move on from that? Like, that's crazy.
It stayed that way. No one said anything about Shaki's mental health for 2 months until Kabir sat down with Shaki in a studio to talk frankly for the very first time. Now consider the irony of this moment. Two friends who need to get real on tape, but neither of them have a lot of practice doing so, tape or no tape. And they're having this conversation for a story about the trouble men having conversations about feelings. It's ironic and meta.
Was there anything you did to, I don't know, for lack of a better way of saying it, was there anything you did to psych yourself up?
To be honest, I do get really socially anxious sometimes. I think, it's only human. But I guess I don't have a way of psyching myself up besides, you know what, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to like drive to the place where this interview is happening, pick up Shaki, and we're going to do this no matter how I feel. It's just, for me, it's just pushing. I guess I'm really good at pushing past my emotions sometimes. Well, hey, that's maybe the silver lining. But I kind of tell myself, you have to do this. Like, there's a reason you're doing this. There's a reason you wanted to do this. How you feel in this moment is not as big as those reasons. So shut up and do it.
Doing it meant Kabir needed to share from time to time in the interview what he was feeling about Shaki. His editor coached him to do that. She told him, you need to open up to your friend. Otherwise, the story will be thin.
So she was telling me, like, you got to dig deeper. You got to actually be honest about yourself as well, because it's going to make the piece better, but also it's only fair to Shaki. Like, it's not just, okay, I'm going to keep bombarding you with questions and what about this, what about this, what about this? But, relating to a person makes it a lot easier for them to be like, okay, cool, this person's not just objectifying me for a story, but this is a meaningful conversation we're having. So I think resonating and relating to things goes a long way in terms of getting people to actually feel comfortable to open up about stuff.
So I finally asked Shaki, dog, what really happened that night?
Then I drove up the hill, you check, where to Digama. And that's when, like, everything just started pouring, rain was pouring.
Here's what he told me. In that whole year where Shaki was ghost, his life got really tough. He had to get real serious about making money. And he felt that he could only do that alone. No distractions, no time to kick it with the homies, no making music. For him, hustling looked like the only solution to his problems. He started a solar panel business with a friend, and for a while, business was booming. Shaki and his brothers even moved into a new house, and they were living that high life. They were even eating takeout now. Even the parents were eating because they could rent out the old family home. And for the first time in years, it seemed like Shaki's sacrifices were paying off. But just 6 months in, it all came crashing down. The business tanked, and Shaki says he didn't like who he was becoming.
I feel like I was becoming a person that I didn't want, a person that I literally swore down to never be like. And that's when everything dawned on me, bro. I was like, yo, I'm literally being this guy.
The kind of guy who borrows money and never pays it back. The kind who lies, not just to others, but to himself. Anything to avoid going back to the bottom. But that's exactly where he went. He moved back into his parents' house, and it was a mess. There was no electricity. The city threatened to cut the water. Shaki's parents were massively behind on mortgage payments. And then the bank came calling. They were going to take the house.
That was my first ever like mental breakdown, like heavy where now it's like, yo, Shaki, bro, you tried your best now, but here it's bigger than you, boy. It's bigger than me. I feel like when you're in that state, you understand like that mindset, like you're in control, but your emotions are just so heavy, bro, that all you can see is like the blurred darkness.
In the story, Kabir says Shaki's changed. He's no longer the trash-talking hustler that he once was. And he's more willing to talk candidly. Making music helps. He says he slows it down and he lets his emotions out through the lyrics. On top of that, the two of them are more present in each other's lives. They check in at least once a week. It's become a ritual. We learn all that in the documentary, and then Shaki turns the tables. Shaki asks Kabir about his struggles with mental health.
You know, it's funny because I get depressed like a lot. Like I think most of my days of the week I'm depressed for some reason. I don't understand why.
Like dash in, dash out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I get like uncontrollable to me.
Yeah.
But it's like, I don't know, like now with all these conversations that happen and the fact that, we actually, now it's like that space has always been there, but now I realize that space is there. And it's kind of like, I'm okay and it's not so scary living with the fact that I'm always depressed. Because actually, there's not something wrong with
There's
me.
nothing wrong, bro.
There's nothing wrong, bro. Nothing to be ashamed of. I didn't even know that I needed to hear that. See, I was raised to believe that silence makes you strong, but there's so much freedom in being real.
This is the part that I find so inspiring about Kabir and the documentary, and why I wanted you to hear it. I was taken by how skillfully he navigated a story fraught with emotion. I mean, it was all about emotion.
Here in the United States, there's a reporter named Elise Spiegel. She used to work for the big public radio network in the United States, National Public Radio, NPR. And she reported on psychology and mental health. And she used to call herself the emotions reporter. Like her beat was emotions. And it seems to me, while you reported the facts of the story about Shaki, you were also an emotions reporter. Does that sound accurate to you?
That feels really great. Yes, I love that. Because I think that's what interests me about journalism more than anything else. I get to learn more about humanity and learn more about what makes people. So hearing that I'm like an emotions type of reporter, I'm like, that's exactly what I want to be. So yay. Thank you for saying that.
Kabir is now working on a new story for Radio Workshop, a story about the closing of a steel mill in Newcastle, South Africa. That's the town where his family is from. If you're struggling with depression and your mental health, there is always help. For support in the U.S., just dial 988. In South Africa, connect with the South African Depression and Anxiety Group. Their number for help is 0800 567 567. Here's something I know about you. You've considered attending I don't actually know anything about you, but I bet you've considered attending an artist's residency. A dedicated period of time in a lovely place to focus on creative work, your creative work. Avery Thompson, a radio producer and a poet, he says he's found residencies to be incredibly valuable. He's sharing what he's learned about them, along with advice about how to land one, in an article at Transom called The Art of the Residency: What Audio Artists Need to Know About These Creative Sanctuaries. The article's up right now at transom.org. And speaking of residencies, for a second year, Transom is sponsoring a residency at the Blue Mountain Center. It's a month of undistracted time and quiet and good food and the beautiful Adirondack Mountains of New York. Plus, it's free. See? Sounds dreamy, right? But you gotta hurry. Applications close February 1st. Find all the deets at transom.org. Genevieve Sponsler, Jay Allison, and Jennifer Jarrett always give me a hand with Sound School, which is brought to you by PRX and Transom. I'm Rob Rosenthal. Thank you very much for listening.